Welcome to the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast with your hosts, Matt High, Richie Kopech, and Joe Capozzi. Welcome to the lair. And welcome into the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast. I'm your host, Matt High, joined today by Joe Capozzi. Rich is still on vacation. He'll be back next week. We got a fun episode today. So before we start off, how you doing tonight, Joe?
Doing pretty well. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Ready to talk about some fantasy football?
Oh, always ready.
Yeah. No, I know what everyone's saying. I say every episode's fun, but hey, when you talk about fantasy football, you're having fun. So it's just great to be doing this.
That's true.
So we got a fun show, and we're going to be talking about bold predictions for the 2023 season, and looking at a couple of them, they're pretty spicy.
They're
So
very bold, and we do not agree on many of them.
yes, so get out the Pepto, have that next to you, and enjoy. Always got to start with a quick question. So today's quick question is, what offense in the 2023 is going to have the biggest change, whether that's good or bad, from the 2022 season till now?
So I'll take this one first. I don't know if it's necessarily a good or bad change, but I think one of the biggest changes to me is going to be the Detroit Lions. I think they're going to be moving from a very run-heavy offense to more of a very pass-heavy offense. They got rid of Swift, they traded Swift, then they also released Jamal Williams. So now they have a rookie running back in Gibbs, who, don't get me wrong, I think is very talented, but I don't think he's going to be seeing the workload that Jamal and Swift are seeing uh, back in last year. And you got to think we have Jamison Williams back, hopefully back to 100%. Got Amon-Ra St. Brown. I just see Jared Goff throwing it way more in this year's offense than he was doing last year, where he had Swift and um, Swift and Jamal to lean on in that run game. So I think they're going to be throwing it a lot more. I'm a little bit more interested in the Lions wide receivers this year than I was last year. And yeah, that's my take. What about you, Matt? What do you think? What team's going to be the biggest change?
For me, it's going to be the Atlanta Falcons, and a lot of it is because Bijan is now there, and Bijan, from all intents and purposes, is just the man right out the gate. So it's going to be a lot of fun seeing what he can do with this offense. Desmond Ridder is now the starting quarterback. So who knows what he can do? But I
We
mean,
saw a little bit of what he can do, and it wasn't that great. But
yeah, I mean, last year was just weird. You know, Marcus Mariota was there. It's just going to be a different time this year, I think. And having a weapon like Bijan, Pitts should be back, full health. Drake London, we've been waiting for the breakout from him. We saw glimpses last year, so I think in this division, especially with the Bucks and everyone, there's a lot of changes going on in that division, and it's up for grabs for anyone who wants it. So it's going to come down to, if they can do well enough, they could compete in that division. You know, I don't expect them to be great, but I do expect them to be fantasy relevant for us, especially having Bijan. So it's going to be fun. We'll see how it goes. But to your point with the Lions, I almost put them down, and I feel like I've loved the Lions for the past season. They're kind of like my second team, just because. I mean, Dan Campbell, you can't root against the guy because he's just awesome. And you know, I got a couple pieces, and it's just going to be so much fun watching what that team can do. And I do think Jared Goff is going to be an incredible value this year in drafts. People are already forgetting him. You know, he's going, you know, as a QB2. I think he can easily finish as a QB1, and it's going to come down to what David Montgomery can do. I don't think he's scoring 17 touchdowns. That was really fluky. So I think a lot of those, let's say we cut that in half, which is still amazing for a running back, and give those to Goff. I mean, Goff would have been a huge play last year, even more so than he already was. But it's just statistics. It's hard to see them scoring that many rushing touchdowns, and a lot of them were at like within the 5 yard line. So many times Goff threw the ball, guy ran down, went down within the 5 yard line, and just turned into a Jamal Williams touchdown. So I think that he's in for a really big bounce back and in a great way. So I agree 1000%. So why don't we get right into it? Because we got some words. So basically, what we're going to do is we'll give our bold predictions, and then how about we just scale 1 to 10, rate how bold we think that is. 10 being most bold, 1 being least. So I'm going to start this off because this one's fun for me, and I feel like a lot of people are going to hate it. I'm going to get a lot of comments, but my first one, Pat Mahomes, quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, will finish outside of the top 5 fantasy quarterbacks in 2023. So before you turn it off, let me tell you why. It's similar kind of last year with my argument that the Chiefs didn't really have a wide receiver room that was the same without Tyreek Hill. So last year, if you remember, they lost Tyreek Hill, they got Juju, Mecole Hardman was there, and they signed MVS. So currently, we have Kadarius Toney. Can't really stay on the field. I'm throwing the injury prone tag on him until I see otherwise. You got MVS is still there, who did pretty much next to nothing except knock me out of a guillotine league. But that's neither here nor there. You got Sky Moore coming off a lackluster rookie year, kind of an unknown. He was drafted in the second round in the 2022 draft, and showed a little bit, but nothing crazy. And I know rookies take a little bit of time to develop in an Andy Reid offense, but in addition, they just drafted another second round wide receiver in Rashee Rice, who is a complete unknown right now in the NFL. He could translate or he could not. And then he got Travis Kelce. So, although I'm not calling for this or projecting this, he's getting older and he's getting closer to the age where the cliff is coming. Now, I know he's a great tight end. He's the best probably ever at this point. I don't know if we're going to make him the GOAT at tight end, but he's close. So, I mean, he's got to become human at some point, don't you think? And even Zeus did that. Zeus became human. I mean, for other reasons, but hey. So there's just a couple unknowns for me that are enough to give me a little bit of pause. And the way I'm projecting this season, some of the guys around him, slightly after him, he's going as the QB1 in drafts right now. 1 or 2 depending on your format. But I just feel like this is going to be a regression year, negative regression year, if anything goes wrong with the wide receiver room, which with this, there's a lot of unknowns. I'm not willing to bank on him being the quarterback one this year when there's a couple other guys. A lot of people are high on Justin Fields, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Lamar Jackson. Like a lot of these guys, I think I'd rather take the shot on them for the upside play. But hey, it's Pat Mahomes. He could completely make me look stupid, but this is kind of where I'm going. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how bold do you think that is?
I think that's either an 8 or a 9. I mean, this is Patrick Mahomes. We've seen him throw the ball sidearm. We've seen him do all. He's mobile. He throws a great ball. He's just an extreme talent, and I think it almost kind of contradicts yourself with you naming all his crappy wide receivers. Like he pretty much had those crappy wide receivers last year, and look at how well he did. So it really doesn't matter who's on the field. He can get those people the ball, even if they're not getting open. And I think Rice is gonna translate. I've heard good things about him coming out of training camp. I think he's gonna do well this year, and I do think that Patrick Mahomes will be a top 5 quarterback. Um, I think he has a chance of not being because just there's so many other talented quarterbacks in the league. I know you named some of them already, but I do think that he's just such an extreme talent that he's going to remain in at least the top 5.
One more thing I want to add before we jump to your guy is, uh, me and Rich actually did an episode where we broke down the 2022 fantasy finishes for all the quarterbacks and stuff. And one of the things we mentioned was scoring was way down for every position across the board. And that's kind of what leads me into this is that there's other guys around him. Like I already said, um, if those scores come up, which typically you do see on a down year, I've looked at it. When you have a down year, next year usually bumps up a little bit. We've seen this a couple times when like we one year has a really good defensive year, and the next year is all offense. It kind of like flip flops a little bit. So that's kind of where I'm leaning towards this. As if those other guys come up with their wide receiver scoring more points, that means it's going to the quarterback. So some of those guys could go up. Now, not saying Pat Mahomes can't go up, but his ceiling is kind of he's been hitting his ceiling like every year. So he's got to have a floor year somewhere. So that's all I'm saying. But let's move on to your bold prediction.
Uh, my bold prediction, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. I don't know if it's that bold, but I don't think that Travis Kelce will be the number one tight end this year. I think there's just too many other talented players in the position, and it's just such a position that's such a wild card that a lot of people are just you're almost like picking up one off the waiver wire and just hoping that they have a good game. In most leagues, unless you're in a tight end premium league, I do think that my tight end one for this year is Mark Andrews. He's shown us how good he can be when Lamar's behind the pocket throwing to him, and with Lamar coming back, I think that he's just gonna have a monster season. And I think there's also a couple other tight ends that I could just outscoring Kelsey, and just I don't think he's going to fly outside the top five, but I don't think he's going to be the tight end one, and I don't think he should be drafted in the first round. What do you think?
God.
1 to 10.
1 to 10, I'm gonna say not finishing the tight end one, maybe not as bold, but not finishing five, that's bold. Kelsey is, in all intents and purposes, he's pretty much the consensus what tight end one has been for the past what 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
I think
pretty
once he's
pretty
finished
consistent.
second to Mark Andrews that year,
Hmm.
him and Lamar decided to just go crazy. Um, I do agree with part of it, and obviously that kind of leads back to mine too. Is he's gonna have to throw to someone, and if Kelsey is getting closer to that age, he could take a slight step back. It's kind of one of those where you're hoping it's not this year, and you're gonna ride it until the wave kind of goes away. But I'll give you a 7 as far as bold. As I do think a
I
lot
feel
of
like I should get
people.
even lower. Think I think I was a safe one, but my others are juicier. I promise.
All right, so bold prediction number 2. This one, we kind of alluded to it on our rankings episodes at the running back position. Devin Singletary will outscore Damian Pierce in 2023. Okay, so let's start with the good about Damian Pierce. Last year, fantasy hero. He shot up draft boards going into the season, and he was on a bad team. David Mills and the Texans were hot garbage. So for being able to do what he did is very, very impressive. Now, let's fast forward to this year. New coach who signed Devin Singletary. Last year, Damian Pierce had to beat out guys like Marlon Mack, Royce Freeman, and Rex Burkhead. Now, none of those guys you think are that great. So his competition was very, very poor. Now, this year, Devin Singletary is there, and despite what people think about Devin Singletary on the Bills offense, they say that's the reason he was so good. Look at who he was beating out. They drafted Zach Moss to take him down and put him in a pass catching role. Didn't work out. Devin Singletary was too good. Okay, there we go. And last year they drafted James Cook when everyone thought this is going to be it. He's going to be the early grinder, and then James Cook is going to just take over the job. Well, that didn't happen either. So they let him walk because now they have Damian Harris in the Bills. So this is just more. Last year, Damian Pierce did well, but his competition was very, very poor. And I still think this is going to be a bad team, despite my love for CJ Stroud. Uh, it's just one of those things where I don't get how he's being drafted so high. And I think a lot of people are just thinking he's going to replicate exactly what he did last year. And I don't think that's the case with the competition and the team output. You know, he wasn't drafted by the current coach, so he has really no allegiance. He was a fourth round pick, so they can move on from him very easily and just give all the touches to Devin Singletary. Now, being the fact that Devin Singletary did go from the Bills and didn't try to work out a deal there and decided to go to the Texans, who everyone, including the NFL, probably thinks is a bottom five offense this year, means something to me that he's not going to go there if he's not going to get work. So it's more of a bet on the competition and the offense than it is a discount on what Damian Pierce is and what he can be. But I see you shaking your head, and I know you're a Damian Pierce guy, so I'm assuming I got kind of bold for you.
Yeah, I think you're out of your mind. Uh,
Sometimes
I,
I am.
I've after making numerous trade attempts to pick up Damian Pierce, and after seeing the draft this year, he just runs. He runs angry. He runs with a vengeance, and he gets those yards after getting touched. And I just think he showed what type of player he is. And I don't think these rejects from the Bills that weren't good enough to stay on the team getting traded to this team are gonna impact his fantasy numbers. And I definitely don't think they're gonna outscore him. Um, that's just me. I think they're I was never a Singletary Moss fan. It was like flipping a coin who was going to play better that week. I think they're both pretty mediocre, if you ask me. So if I had to pick any of them, I'm still putting all my eggs in the Damian Pierce basket every time. But and I think that's a pretty bold prediction. I'd give you like an 8 on that one
All
because no shot,
right.
no
We'll
shot.
see. We'll see at the end of 2023 when
That's like saying like
Singletary.
there's a new coach on the Chiefs and he signs, I don't know, Cam Newton. It's like, oh, well, the coach signed Cam Newton. I guess they're not going to play Pat Mahomes anymore. No
I don't
shot.
know.
No
We'll see.
shot.
We'll we'll see.
You're
I'll
crazy.
we'll think of a bet. We'll put that as a bet.
Deal.
And
Take
okay.
that
All
any
right.
day.
All right. We'll come up with a punishment. But basically, if he's not, then I get punished. If he is, then we'll make it some we'll make it something fun.
All right.
All right. What's your next guy?
My number two is that DJ Moore will be a top 15 wide receiver. I've been high on DJ Moore ever since he came into the league. Back when he was with Cam Newton on the Panthers, uh, then Cam Newton left, and he never really shined like I feel like he can. I think moving to the Bears and becoming Justin Fields wide receiver one, I think he's going to have a monster season. I think he's going to be the first place that Justin Fields looks to throw the ball more often than none. And I think he's going to see a lot of targets and a couple touchdowns here and there and just have a monster season that's going to put him within some of the elite wide receivers for the season.
I, Me and Rich were talking about this on one of the first episodes we ever really did, and one of the things is looking at these teams, what transactions they make when they have a quarterback that's developing, and when they get them that star number one surefire wide receiver, it just works, and they take the leap, and it just elevates everyone on the team. So I get that. I'm a little hesitant on how much, just because I do think this team is going to run the ball a lot more. Because look who they have at quarterback. Justin Fields almost broke the record that Lamar Jackson set a couple years ago. But as far as top 15, I think that's a little bold just because you're expecting a lot of touchdowns. But I do see it. I can see it. If Justin Fields can get better as a passer and this offense can figure things out, I mean, sky's the limit for both of them. I do think this could happen. So, but as far as bold, I'm gonna give you a 7 again because I think that's the odds are against it, obviously, just because of the things I mentioned. But the hope is there, and it's gonna come down to a couple big plays, and I think DJ Moore is talented enough to do exactly what you're projecting him to do. So I like it. I like it. All right, so
I do too. That's why I picked it.
yeah, it makes sense. So this one, there's some layers to this. So we're gonna break out the knife here. But Antonio Gibson will finish as an RB2 in 2023. Not the RB2, but an RB2. All right. Now let's take a walk through the Commanders.
Yeah, walk. That's all he's going to be doing. He's not going to be running too much.
he'll be catching. Hey, he might be walking into the end zone, but hey, I'll still take the points. All right. So the Commanders, no one really expects, unless I am living under a rock. No one expects them to really be a great team. We have Sam Howell, who only played one game, and it was week 18, so you could pretty much throw it out because those usually mean absolutely nothing for most teams. So it's going to be one of those things where I'm looking at what the team did this offseason. They hired Eric Bieniemy, who came from the Chiefs, and they had a pass catching running back there. His name was Jarek McKinnon, and he was fantasy gold if you had him last year because he caught a lot of passes and scored a lot of touchdowns, and was on an offense that used him. The offensive mind of Eric Bieniemy used him to his fullest potential. Now we go to the Commanders. Riverboat Ron Rivera, head coach, has constantly said to our annoyance that Antonio Gibson is like Christian McCaffrey. And we've been kind of saying, yes, use him that way because he is great. He can handle the workload. He's great at pass catching. Because let's not forget, he is a converted wide receiver to a running back. He did that, I think it was the last year in college, and then came out and was drafted as a running back. First year, hit the ground running. Second year, did pretty good. So they also, in addition to the news with Eric Bieniemy, they also got rid of J.D. McKissick. They let him walk, who was the pass catching back on that team. So I'm just looking at what's going on here. Brian Robinson, he's just a guy to me. He's just gonna he's doesn't catch passes at all.
He
He's
doesn't
going to
need
be.
to.
I think he does.
Matt, the man got shot and he came back and he
I
ran it.
understand.
He
I
ran it with a
understand.
vengeance.
Yes, but in this team, being that we're expecting them to be bad, they're going to be trailing from behind, which means a lot of passes to catch up to whatever team is beating up on them, and that's going to be where Antonio Gibson shines. He's going to be on the field every third down. He also has the ability to do first and second down work to give Ryan Robinson a break. And I mean, his workload, he's had 213, 311, and 206 touches in each of the past 3 seasons. So I expect him to be closer to 250 touches with the loss of J.D. McKissick on this team. And what makes him the RB2 and RB2 for me is the floor. In a PPR league, I think his floor is going to be safe enough and his upside is going to be enough just to get you as an RB2, lock and load, set him and forget him kind of guy. So, all right, give me the number because I'm sure it's high.
Uh, I don't think it's as high as the last one you said. I do think I'd say it's like a 6, 7, but I definitely think you're wrong. I disagree with you. Like you said, the quarterback room over there is kind of in shambles. You got Sam Howell, you got Mr. Brisket himself over there, and you got what Jake Fromm I think is QB3. So you don't really have any stars over there. I definitely think they're going to be leaning on running the ball more than throwing it due to that fact that they don't have any stars over there. And you're going to see Brian Robinson getting those first looks at runs. And if he's able to break through, getting those points. I do think they're going to go to third down a lot. And I do think that Gibson's going to be on the field for those. But it's going to be like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10 that they're going to have to be throwing it to Terry McLaurin and Dotson and the other weapons. And Gibson's going to be blocking for whoever crappy quarterback's back there trying to get it down the field to get them the first down. I don't think he's going to outscore. I don't think he's going to be a quarterback too. I don't think he's going to outscore Brian Robinson, and I think you've lost your marbles.
I mean, you could be right. I could have lost my marbles, but I'm still gonna go with it. I'm riding that. I'm a little higher. I'm the high guy between the three of us on Antonio Gibson. So we'll let the season play out, and when he becomes an RB2, and Brian Robinson plays 17 games and is the RB like 30 or worse, I'll just maybe I'll get you some marbles. So.
Okay, deal.
All right. Who's up next?
My third one is that Juju Smith-Schuster will be a top 25 wide receiver.
That's bold.
I don't think that's bull. I feel like people are doing him dirty. I mean, look at last year, right? The by all means, last year the Patriots were not a very good team. I think we can all agree on that. They were struggling with quarterbacks. They had injuries, and yet you had Jacoby Myers put up good numbers. Now you have Juju coming into this team, filling that role, and he's going to see all those targets. And I feel like he's a much more talented player, and he's going to get even. I don't get me wrong. I don't think he's going to be scoring a lot of touchdowns, but he's going to be seeing a lot of targets. And in a PPR league, that turns into a lot of fantasy points, and meaning he's going to be up there in points just from being safety outlets, looking for the first downs from him. I mean, I do think they're going to be a run heavy team with Stevenson. I think he's going to have a monster season. But when they do get backed up there, they're going to be throwing it, and Juju is going to be the guy getting the ball, and he's going to be getting the fantasy points.
See, this is where I think you've lost your marbles because Juju's not even healthy right now. I don't know if you saw those little news
Yeah, he's
blurbs.
doing
His
TikTok dances. He's good.
Oh yeah, could be why he's always injured. You know, got to practice for those TikToks and keeps you off the field. But I just don't. I know you're a Mac Jones truther. I don't see it at all. You know, Juju was the wide receiver 27 last year with Pat freaking Mahomes, with no one outside of Travis Kelsey really competing for targets with him, and I just don't see it, man. I'm sorry, but Juju is kind of buried for me. I forget where I even have him. I think I got him in the 40s. I think he's currently going as a wide receiver 44 according to Fantasy Pros ADP, and even that might be a little too high. We're still waiting for the DeAndre Hopkins news to drop where he's going, and one of the teams was the Patriots. And if that happens, then you're taking a already small pie with a bunch of holes in it and adding another person who's going to take some of that away. So that one I think is your boldest yet, and I'm going to give it a 9. Definitely,
All
definitely a
right.
high one. But we'll see. I'm willing to be wrong. You know, these are bold for a reason. You know, this is we're still in June, so a lot of things are going to change, and that could be one of the biggest things that does change. So next one, this could be my boldest yet. This one I think has more of my heart in it as well. But Tim Patrick, who did not play a single game on the dysfunctional Broncos in 2022, will be a top 36 wide receiver in fantasy for 2023. So, 2022 Broncos were just a disappointment to pretty much everyone except for their fellow AFC division mates. They all enjoyed that very, very much, including the Seattle Seahawks. They really like watching that last year. But I'm really expecting a decent bounce back in 2023. There's going to be a lot of big changes coming. So, first off, got a new head coach. Sean Payton proving success at the head coach position with the Saints, knows how to get the best out of his players. So, this is going to be a coach's team. He already kind of, when he was hired, there was a lot of news blurbs about he's just basically setting the rules down for everyone. No one's above the rules. It's his way or that's it. So I do think he's going to run a tight ship, and it's going to translate very well for this offense to run as a whole. So, second point, they are going to get Tim Patrick back. Sutton is there. Jerry Jeudy broke out last year. They have KJ Hamler, Marvin Mims, all these guys. Now, going into 2022, before his injury in practice, we heard all the news, all the buzz about Tim Patrick has been Russell Wilson's favorite target since, in practices. So I'm kind of riding on that, where if he comes back, he has done very well with Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton on the field at the same time. So looking at his seasons in 2020 and 2021, he averaged about just over 5 targets a game. So I know he's going to be involved. You know, if that drops a little bit with the guys they drafted, we're all still waiting too. Sutton could be out the door at any point during the season. And if that's the case, Tim Patrick is going to be the wide receiver 2 on that offense while Marvin Mims is getting up to speed. You know, they signed both of them to a long-term extension. I think they're signed until 2025, but they can get out after the 2024 season. So it's just set up right that Tim Patrick is basically free at every draft. You can get him probably close to your last pick. If he might even go undrafted, but I do think there's going to be a role in this offense for him, and I think it's a mistake to not draft him and you know look at the value you get as having someone of his caliber versus Cortland Sutton, who is disappointed. So, and don't hear what I'm not saying. I don't think Cortland Sutton sucks, but it's just one of those. I'm looking at the history that both have played together on the same time, and Tim Patrick has been the guy that has played above him. So we'll see, but I'm willing to be wrong. But I think this one, like I said, more of a heart pick, but I do think it could happen. So what's the boldometer?
10.
That's what I figured. Figured that
When
was
you
coming.
when you told me this one, I had to Google who Tim Patrick was. That's how high on my radar this guy is. And for you, what did you say? A top 36 quarterback?
Top
No
top
way.
36.
We saw what Russell Wilson was doing last year, and it wasn't that impressive. Granted, I think he's gonna have a way better bounce back year this year, but look at the other. I mean, not only Cortland Sutton, you got Jerry Jeudy, you got Greg Doach over there. He's got other weapons, and Tim Patrick's the last person he's going to be looking to throw the ball to. I don't think he's a player of his caliber. You're saying I don't think he has any calibers. I don't think he's a very good player. That granted, that's why he's a wide receiver 3 and not a wide receiver 1 somewhere. And I don't see it happening in any reality. And I think this one was your boldest prediction of the night because no,
We'll see.
I'm pretty sure I dropped Tim Patrick in our dynasty league.
No, I think I drafted him.
No, I think I dropped him. I think I picked him up
Maybe.
at one point and dropped him because that's how little belief I had in him.
I believe in Tim Patrick. So that'll be the name of the episode. Believe in Tim Patrick. Just like in
I
Ted
don't think many
Lasso.
people are going to believe in Tim Patrick.
Well, he's got one. I believe. We'll see. All right, let's finish with yours. Who you got?
All right, my last one is that Baker Mayfield will be a top 20 quarterback next season. And here's why. We've seen what Baker can do. We've seen him on the Browns. He didn't granted he's no QB1 on a season, but he was slinging the ball. He's running the ball. He was doing football stuff over there. Gets traded to the Rams or picked up on the Rams, whatever. He starts that one game. We all saw that game, or at least saw the highlights of him coming onto the field with Matt Stafford out and coming back and winning the game for the Rams. He's shown us that he's still an NFL caliber quarterback. And now he's going to Tampa Bay that had Tom Brady over there. You have weapons with Mike Evans, who people I think are counting out too much. He's a touchdown monster. Godwin. I mean, these are two top tier caliber wide receivers that are under at his disposal. I think he's going to have a good. I don't think he's going to be the QB 1 or 2, but he's going to be in the top 20. He's going to put up points. He's going to get touchdowns with Evans, and I think people are writing him off. I think I saw him using the bottom, like he was almost he's like 31 or 30 or something last time I looked, and that's crazy to me. I don't think there's other quarterbacks out there that are going to do better than Baker Mayfield. I think people are doing him an injustice, and I think you could get him and stash him on your bench and have a steal later in the season.
I think you've lost it.
I think you're hating.
I have. So when we did our rankings, so I'm looking at mine right now. I ranked, statted out 33 quarterbacks for this season. He's ranked at 32. And I think
You think Sam Howell is going to do better
I do.
than you're crazy.
Wholeheartedly, I do. Baker, I'm looking at Fantasy Pros ADP. He's currently going at 33. That's his rank. So mine at 32 might be too high. I don't see it. And I think he's only had over 500 pass attempts in a season once, if I remember correctly. And this is a team that's headed for, despite what they think, I think they're heading for a full blown rebuild. They had their fun. They won their Super Bowl with Tom Brady. They tried to run it back, didn't work out, and now they're paying the piper. They're doing what the Rams are doing. Again, they got their Super Bowl, and that's kind of it. They got a couple pieces, but I don't think anyone thinks they're a main contender. And this is part of why uh, I do think, bring it back to the top of the show with the quick question, the Falcons. This division is just up for grabs. Whoever wants it can go get it. A lot of different things going on there, and a lot of the juggernauts are no longer juggernauts in our eyes. Now, we think fantasy more than NFL, so there's a different aspect, but I just do think that Baker Mayfield is going to lose the job. His OTAs have not been good. His minicamp has not been good. There's a lot of highlights, or if you can call them highlights, they're more like lowlights,
But
medium
they
lights.
also, you could say the same thing about Kyle Trask.
Oh yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I don't think
But
either
Kyle
one of
Tra
them.
but Kyle Trask hasn't shown us anything. Whereas Baker Mayfield has at least shown us in other games on other teams that he could play football.
Yes, but to finish inside the top 20 at quarterback, you got to put together a string
Oh
of
yeah.
games, and I don't think he's going to be able to do that. We've seen with good pass catching weapons on the Browns, they kind of he just I know a lot of it was he was playing injured, so I don't want to take that away from him, but came back and he's a wild card. We'll leave it at that. I don't see the upside for him, but he's gonna be free in draft, so you could take a shot, and if it doesn't work out, didn't cost you anything. So that's where I'm gonna give you a 10 for Baker. He deserves a 10. It's probably the only 10 he's going to get this year. But hey, might be
Wow.
hating on the
You're
man, but
wait
I don't
wait
know.
until our episode we next year and we'll bring up this clip and you'll be like, wow, I really shouldn't have said Baker wasn't gonna be a top 20 quarterback.
I'll save it. I'll clip it and I'll put it away, put it in a file, keep it safe, and then we'll revisit it when we recap the 2023 season when all of my predictions come true. I got the
Oh,
crystal ball. I've been looking, been practicing. I see it. I have the NFL script, and all of these things just I pulled out before they took it away from me. That's what happened. But that is it. Those are the bold predictions for the 2023 season. I'm going to drop a couple of these on Twitter. We'll see what the people say, how bold we are, if they think we were fair, if we should all check into the nearest mental health hospital, or if we should just, ride with it. But that's it. Enjoy the rest of your night. We'll be back. Rich should be back next week, and we'll do another fun episode. Because, like I said, fantasy is always fun. Good night. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the Heroes FF.